Jamal the VYS stared at the blank check in his trembling hands. The same billionaire who'd called security on him yesterday was now offering him millions. But the price tag, his silence about what he'd witnessed in that hospital basement, was too high. I know you're wondering what happened and how we got here. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage in the face of discrimination, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more stories about extraordinary indie VY duels overcoming impossible odds. Now, let's rewind to see how a young mechanic's life changed forever. It was the kind of place you wouldn't think twice about passing through. Underage, Arizona, this forgotten desert town where dreams went to die and prejudice flourished like the cactus that dotted the harsh landscape. If you weren't born here, you didn't belong. That's what they always said. But for 17-year-old Jamal de VYS, this was home, and it had shaped him into someone extraordinary. A mechanic, sure, but not just any mechanic. He had a gift. Jamal's hands moved with uncanny precision, working over an old carburetor like it was second nature, fingers dancing across metal parts as if they were extensions of his own body. He could fix anything, and I mean anything, from an old Buick to a busted refrigerator that someone else had written off as junk. It wasn't magic, but it felt like it to the folks around here. But this wasn't just a guy who fixed things. This was Sir VY Val. Every day he fought for his future, his family, and for a dream that seemed a million miles away. His small workshop, hidden behind his grandmother's house, was a place where miracles happened. Nothing fancy, just a shed packed with tools he'd scavenged from dumpsters and thrift stores. Every part and every scrap had a purpose. He didn't have the fancy education. There were no degrees hanging on the wall. Jamal learned from old manuals, online VY deos at the library, and lessons from his father, who had died in a tragic factory accident when Jamal was just 8. His dad had been the same way, hands that could fix anything. The only thing Jamal had left of him was an old toolbox and a pile of broken dreams. Sometimes, late at night, Jamal would whisper to himself, "Engineering school." The dream was there, distant but shining like a star he could never reach. But tuition costs? Those might as well have been measured in billions for all the chance Jamal had of affording them. His part-time gig at Harmon's auto shop barely kept him afloat, and every day he had to swallow his pride. Yesterday, a customer had refused his help, demanding a qualified mechanic to look at his Mercedes. Jamal had worked on more cars than the so-called experts at Harmon's, but the world saw him as nothing more than a kid who didn't fit. The customer went to Tom Harmon, the shop's owner, who happily took Jamal's diagnosis and pocketed the extra fee. Jamal walked out, his pride bruised but his hands still steady. And that's when Marcus called. His childhood friend from Crestview Medical Center, a shiny hospital that served the wealthy part of town. It was a place Jamal knew he'd never belong unless he was cleaning floors or taking out the trash. But now, Marcus was calling with an emergency. A baby needed transport. A life or death situation. And Jamal was the only one who could fix the damn ambulance. It wasn't a place for a mechanic like Jamal. He hesitated for a moment, staring at the phone in his hand, but then the voice on the other end cut through his doubt. "Jamal, they need you here. If we don't get this baby to Phoenix, she's gone." Without thinking, Jamal threw on his cleanest shirt and grabbed his toolbox. If there was one thing he could do, it was fix things. So, he did what any man would do when someone's life was on the line. He showed up. The hospital loomed ahead, its glass and steel construction gleaming in the afternoon sun. Jamal parked his grandmother's beat-up Corolla next to 2 luxury SUVs. The contrast wasn't lost on him. His heart raced as he approached the emergency entrance, clutching his toolbox like a shield. The security guards straightened when they saw him. One of them moved forward with the kind of look that said, "You don't belong here." Jamal tried to keep calm. "I'm here to help with the neonatal transport ambulance. Marcus called me." They exchanged looks, then one guard said, "We don't take outside contractors. You'll have to leave." "I'm the one who can fix it," Jamal insisted. He was shaking, but he wasn't backing down. There was a baby's life hanging in the balance. Marcus came rushing over, and suddenly, the tension shifted. "Dr. Chen authorized him to check the ambulance," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. The guards didn't like it, but in the end, they had no choice. "Follow me," Marcus said, and they entered the antiseptic world of Crestview. It was all so sterilely so foreign to Jamal. But he focused on the task ahead. Marcus filled him in as they walked, telling him about the baby, Sophia Reynolds. Born with a rare heart condition, she needed immediate transport to Phoenix Children's Hospital. The neonatal transport ambulance had everything she needed except it wasn't working. They reached the ambulance bay, and Jamal's stomach dropped. The ambulance was surrounded by technicians, all looking frustrated, their faces showing growing panic. A woman in a white coat was barking orders. Dr. Chun, the lead doctor. And standing apart from the group, looking like he was about to explode, was Warren Reynolds, the billionaire tech mogul. "Is this the kid?" Reynolds demanded, eyeing Jamal like he'd just walked in off the street. His voice was sharp, accusatory. Jamal stood tall. "I can help," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the way Reynolds was looking at him. "Let me check it out." The doctor seemed to be the only one willing to listen. "We're out of options," she said. "Can you fix it?" As Jamal stepped forward, he could feel every eye on him, and the pressure of the situation weighed on him. This wasn't just any car he was fixing. A baby's life was at stake, and if he didn't fix it, he knelt by the ambulance, tracing the lines of the equipment with his fingers. And then he found it. The issue wasn't in the interface, it was in the delivery system. Someone had sabotaged it. A slight leak, nothing the technicians had noticed, but enough to make everything malfunction. "I need some tools," Jamal said, trying to keep his voice calm. He couldn't afford to lose his focus now. But before anyone could respond, Richard Keller, the lead technician, stepped forward. "We don't need some kid playing with equipment he doesn't understand," he sneered. "Actually, Dr. Chun interjected, her voice sharp, "you failed to fix it. So I think it's time to try something different." Jamal went to work, and the tension in the room grew thicker by the second. The equipment hummed and beeped, like a symphony playing just out of tune. Jamal worked slowly, methodically, focusing on each part like it was a puzzle that had to be solved. And then, finally, he found it. The pressure valve had been tampered with, just slightly enough to throw everything off balance. When he fixed it, the monitors blinked green. Oxygen flow stabilized. "It's working," Dr. Chun said, a note of surprise in her voice. "It's working." Relief washed through Jamal. But that relief was short-lived. Richard didn't want to admit defeat. He made excuses, blaming Jamal for everything. But Jamal wasn't interested in being the scapegoat. He had done what was needed. Just as things seemed to calm, the pressure dropped again. This time, it wasn't the equipment. Jamal had a suspicion. He looked at Richard, who was acting way too nervous, and then at the others around him. It was too neat, too controlled. The sabotage wasn't over. The truth started to unravel. Jamal had been set upist as a pawn in a much bigger game. Jamal's mind raced as he pieced the puzzle together. The sabotage was deliberate. This wasn't just a broken system, it was a calculated attack on a life. Someone didn't just want to stop the transport. They wanted to make sure the baby wouldn't make it. The chaos around him intensified. The techs were scrambling, but Jamal knew they were wasting time. "The problem isn't with the equipment anymore," he said, his voice steady. "It's with someone in this room." Everyone froze. "What are you talking about?" Richard snapped, his face reddening. "I'm talking about sabotage. You've been working with someone on the inside. And I think you're trying to cover it up," Jamal said, his eyes locking onto Richard's. Dr. Chun stepped forward, her expression growing darker. "What's he talking about, Richard?" Jamal's pulse quickened, but he kept his voice calm. "This isn't just equipment failure. Someone is manually overriding the pressure systems. It's too precise. It's been planned." Warren Reynolds stepped closer, his face grim. "What's going on here, Richard? Are you trying to kill my daughter?" Richard's eyes flickered nervously, his composure cracking. "No, I didn't." Dr. Chun raised her hand to stop him. "You've been tampering with the system, haven't you? I can see it in your face. You're trying to cover up your mess." Jamal knew they needed proof, and they needed it fast. He quickly turned to the system diagnostics. There was a manual override valve. The readings, the exact ones Jamal had adjusted before, were now behaving abnormally. But this wasn't just a malfunction, it was too controlled. Jamal had been right, the system wasn't failing, it was being manipulated. "I need to see the security footage," Jamal demanded, his tone unyielding. The administrator, who had been silently watching the exchange, stepped forward. "The security footage. There's been a malfunction." Jamal's eyes narrowed. Convenient. Too convenient. That was when it hit him the security footage wasn't malfunctioning. It was being erased. Jamal had seen enough of how things worked in Underage. People didn't want the truth to come out, especially not when it would expose their lies. The pieces clicked into place. The sabotage was about more than just stopping an ambulance. This was about money. Corporate espionage. Somebody was trying to prevent Warren Reynolds' company from acquiring Meditech Industries by distracting him with a personal tragedy. The child was just leverage a pawn in a corporate game. I know who's behind this, Jamal said, looking straight at the administrator. And I know you're involved too. The administrator's face went pale. You don't know what you're talking about, kid. But Jamal wasn't backing down. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been covering for them all along. It wasn't just Richard. It wasn't just the hospital staff. It was a whole network of conspiracy trying to stop a billionaire's deal by using his daughter's life as bait. Warren Reynolds clenched his fists. Who else is involved? Who's behind this? Before Jamal could answer, Marcus, his childhood friend, appeared in the doorway, wide-eyed. What's going on? They said they found the baby. Is everything okay? Jamal turned toward him. Marcus, you've got to trust me. Someone in here is trying to make it look like I sabotaged the system, but I didn't. They're using us both. The look of confusion on Marcus' face turned to one of realization. You're talking about the sabotage, aren't you? The one in the ambulance. Jamal nodded. It's bigger than that. This was a planned hit. Someone's trying to stop Reynolds' deal with Meditech. They used us, used the baby, as leverage. The group around them began to stir, murmuring, realizing how deep this went. Warren Reynolds took one final look at the techs and administrators standing around. He didn't say anything for a long while, but when he finally did, it was with authority. We're getting to the bottom of this right now. He turned to Dr. Chun. Find the person who's been behind this. Get the truth, and if Jamal's right, find out who's covering it up. Jamal felt a sense of unease, but also something else, a sense of justice. For once, the truth wasn't being silenced by wealth or power. It was being exposed for what it was, a malicious plot by people who saw a child's life as collateral damage. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Richard Keller had been working with the CEO of Nexus Medical Systems, Carlton Reed. The sabotage was all part of a corporate scheme to disrupt Warren Reynolds' business acquisition of Meditech Industries. They had figured that if they distracted him with his daughter's life, he would fall behind on his deal and lose everything. The administrators at the hospital had received hefty bribes to cover up the sabotage and manipulate the security footage. But thanks to Jamal's quick thinking and determination, the entire conspiracy began to unravel. Richard and the administrator were arrested, and Carlton Reed's involvement was exposed as the mastermind behind the entire operation. The truth came out, and justice was finally served. Jamal had saved the day, but more than that, he had saved a life and exposed a conspiracy that reached far beyond the hospital walls. But as he stood there, watching the helicopter carrying baby Sophia finally take off, he knew that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Warren Reynolds came to him as the helicopter faded into the sky. Jamal, you've done more than anyone could ever expect. You've saved my daughter's life. And for that, I'll never forget what you did. Jamal smiled, but it wasn't the smile of someone who had just saved the day. It was the smile of someone who knew this was about much more than just a single life. This was about something bigger, something that could change everything. Jamal's thoughts raced, the reality of the moment sinking in. You'll be hearing from me, he said. This isn't just about saving one life. It's about making sure no one ever has to go through this again. Warren looked at him, a moment of understanding passing between them. I think you're right. Months later, Jamal stood in front of a crowd at the opening of the Ella de Vys Technical Academy, named after his grandmother. The academy was a symbol of Chanhae, a place where the community would have the resources to lift themselves up, a place where kids like Jamal wouldn't have to fight for every chance. Warren Reynolds had come through, not just with a scholarship, but with a promise to change the system. Jamal had always been the fixer, but now he was fixing more than just machines. He was fixing lives. As the ribbon was cut, Jamal looked out at the future he'd helped build. The struggle had been real. The fight for justice, for opportunity, for recognition, it hadn't been easy. But in that moment, he realized something. Sometimes the most important work is the work that's done quietly, behind the scenes, fixing what's broken. And Jamal knew that this was just the beginning.